Hello, and thank you for joining me today. Well, this is the Wednesday, August 14th edition of our video devotionals. We appreciate you being with us today, and I do hope your Wednesday's going well. It is, again, the middle part of the work week, right? And also it's Wednesday evening church time for those who can attend. We're going to jump into it kind of quickly here today. We have a theme going on here at our church this month, a youth emphasis, obviously with school starting back this month as a rule. And we just want to look at what the Bible says about it and be the kind of church that's reaching everybody, including the youth. And of course, if you're going to reach the youth, you're reaching those parents also. So we want to do that. So this past Sunday sermon is what I'm going to give you, just a kind of nugget today, and then tomorrow we'll give you what was this past Sunday afternoon's sermon. So 1 Samuel chapter 17, I've got some phrases underlined in 4 different verses here, actually 5 different verses. Just going to underline. I've got them underlined, but I'm just going to highlight them real quick, and then get back to verse 12 and say a little bit more about that. Otherwise, if you've ever thought, wonder what made David David. We might even say, wonder why David actually confronted Goliath, and it was he, not his brothers, not Saul, not another soldier, not even a group of soldiers. I said Sunday, is there a law against 20 people going up against that one man? I mean, but the point is that what made David David. So I'm going to just kind of highlight some verses here that the Bible speaks about as he is there that day speaking about Goliath and actually confronting Goliath himself. Notice here in verse 26 it says, David is speaking to the men. He says that he should defy the armies of the living God. It says in verse number 29 is his brothers are criticizing David for even being there and acting all, kind of tough, if we might say. He says, is there not a cause? Verse 36 says, he hath defied the armies of the living God. And verse 45, David is actually speaking to the giant, Goliath. And he says, but I come to thee in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom thou hast defied. And then lastly here, he says, the battle is the Lord's, and he will give it into our hands. So obviously that which made David David was his connection with God, that love for God, and he's taking his stand. That was the great motivation to go against Goliath, is that. And that goes without saying. And I want our young people to have a foundation in which they love the Lord. Obviously, winning them to the Lord. Young people need to get saved, of course, at the earliest age that they would understand and could accept the Lord. And then, of course, teach them the things of God. That's obvious, so that we can produce people that could be a David, so to speak. Let me show you something else here in verse number 12 that I think is also very, very important that made David David. All right, I want you to notice here in verse number 12, it says, now David was the son of that Ephrathite of Bethlehem, Judah, whose name was Jesse. So it's just making the point here that David's father indeed was Jesse. And he had 8 sons. Now notice this, I have this underlined in my Bible. And the man went among men for an old man in the days of Saul. Let me read that again. And the man went among men for an old man in the days of Saul. You know why I think David was also David? And probably what helped David become the one who would walk with God is his father Jesse. Jesse was the kind of person that when he walked amongst men, we're talking about men like soldiers, men, like men we would say today, just there goes a man, we would say, not pointing out the gender, but pointing out the character and the good traits because he's masculine and he's a man. And Jesse was that kind of man. So I think David was raised by a man who taught his son to be a man. Now, I said Sunday, of course, I can't spend all the time now, and I'm going to do this probably in the next 1 minute or less. But, there is a great attack today on masculinity. There's an attack on femininity. That's been going on for a long time, too. But you see all these things with the gender and the transgenders and all these different things. I'm making the point that David, he loved the Lord. He walked with God. He went up against Goliath because Goliath blasphemed God. But I also believe that David was a boy who was becoming a man because his father Jesse was teaching him to be that way. And if you're a parent out there And I also say this: if you're a lady and you're trying to raise children, then point them to men if there's not a man in the house, and that's certainly something that's a reality. As a preacher, I try to help our people see a man in the pulpit because I think God has created masculinity. He wanted the men to be men and the women to be women. And when we say that, we're talking about a man in the masculinity and a woman in her femininity. And I think that's so important. So I think today, as we think about David and him going up against Goliath and the power of God, he also was a man that knew how to be a man because his dad, Jesse, when he walked amongst the men, the other men said, "Now there goes a man." And I think that's very, very important for today. So I hope you understand that. Hope it's good for you, and maybe share that with somebody today. Otherwise, we're out today. Have a great day, safe day, healthy day, all of that. Lord willing, we'll see you tomorrow. And thank you for watching.